Tonight, as you lie waiting to sleep, we are not here to find simple answers. We are here to explore Dostoevsky's philosophy, explained, a journey into the profound and unsettling idea that there is a strange, transformative beauty in suffering. As your body finds rest, your mind is invited to awaken, to confront the very architecture of your own soul. We will not look away from the darkness, but rather look through it, using the words of a man who lived in the extremes of human experience. What if the deepest understanding of life isn't found in comfort and light, but in the very shadows you've been taught to avoid? What if the key to your freedom is hidden inside the very paradox of your pain? Stay present for just a while, and let us explore the world of a man who believed you must walk through the fire to find what is real. This is the world of Fyodor Dostoevsky, and this is not a philosophy you study. It is one you survive. It is not a collection of abstract ideas born in a quiet university, but a desperate and vital cry forged in the crucible of human extremity. To understand Dostoevsky, you must first understand the man. This was a man sentenced to death, led before a firing squad, and given a reprieve only at the last possible second. This was a man who spent years in a Siberian labor camp, living among murderers, thieves, and the broken remnants of humanity. His philosophy was not built from what he read. It was built from what he endured. It is a philosophy of the underground, that secret, chaotic, and often dark place inside every human being. He is not interested in how you should behave. He is interested in how you do behave, especially when you are alone, in the dark, with your most forbidden thoughts. He begins with a radical premise. You are not a rational creature. You are a creature of will, of passion, of spite, and of profound, contradictory desires. You are a creature who will, in his own words, sometimes choose suffering over happiness, just to prove that you are free. This is the starting point. Not logic, but paradox. Not social theory, but the agonizing, private reality of your own consciousness. You are not a simple equation. You are not 2 + 2 = 4. You are something wilder, something more dangerous, and perhaps something much more divine. As you listen, in the quiet of this room, you may feel this truth resonate. You may recognize the parts of yourself that defy your own logic, the impulses that rise up against your own best interests. Dostoevsky gives these impulses a voice. He argues that this internal chaos is not a flaw to be fixed. It is the very essence of your humanity. His work is a mirror held up to the parts of your soul that society and you yourself have tried to tame or ignore. He asks you to look, without flinching, at your own capacity for good and for evil, for faith and for doubt. His philosophy, then, is an invitation to stop seeking a life of simple comfort and instead to embrace the terrifying, beautiful, and profound complexity of what it means to be truly, painfully alive. Dostoevsky, the explorer of the human soul. What does it mean to explore the human soul? For Dostoevsky, it was not a gentle act of academic curiosity. It was a violent, desperate excavation. He was not a tourist in the human condition. He was a prisoner of it, and he documented his prison with a terrifying, feverish honesty. You, too, are an explorer of your own soul, whether you know it or not. Every night, in the quiet, you navigate its hidden landscapes. Dostoevsky simply provides a map to the territories we fear most. His genius was to show that the soul is not a single, unified thing. It is a battlefield. It is the place where the whisper of God and the logic of the devil hold their eternal debate. And you are the battlefield. He illustrates this through his characters, each a universe of conflict. Look at Raskolnikov from Crime and Punishment. He is the perfect example of the soul at war. On the surface, he has a cold, rational, Superman theory that permits him to murder an old pawnbroker. His intellect tells him it is logical, even beneficial. But the moment he acts, his soul rebels. He is not overcome by a better argument. He is overcome by a physical, visceral sickness. He faints. He grows feverish. He is haunted, not by the ghost of his victim, but by the undeniable, irrational reality of his own conscience. This is Dostoevsky's method. He pushes his characters to the absolute extreme. He wants to see what happens when your theories, your beliefs, and your rationalizations collapse under the weight of a single, terrible choice. He reveals that you do not truly know yourself until you have been tested. He introduces the idea of the psychological double, the intimate horror of confronting another version of yourself. He shows that the most depraved sinner and the most luminous saint are not opposites. They are neighbors living inside the same person, perhaps even inside of you. As you listen, you might recognize these voices: the voice of pride, the voice of compassion, the voice of doubt, the voice of rage. He doesn't just describe them, he lets them scream. He understood that to be human is to be in a constant state of becoming, a painful, chaotic process of the soul fighting to be born. His exploration teaches one ultimate lesson: you cannot know yourself by analysis alone. You must know yourself through crisis, through love, and most importantly, through the unavoidable fire of suffering. The struggle between faith and reason, an existential dilemma. You are a creature of logic. You build your life on what you can prove, on what makes sense in the light of day. You trust in science, in patterns, in the laws of cause and effect. But then, there is the night. There is the silence. And in that silence, reason can feel thin, like a fragile sheet of ice over a deep, dark, and bottomless ocean. This is the dilemma that tormented Dostoevsky, and it is the central dilemma of your own modern life. He places you, and all of us, at the ultimate crossroads, the crossroads of faith and reason. For him, this was not a polite debate. It was a war. In his work, reason is a powerful, seductive, and ultimately destructive force when left to itself. Reason is the Crystal Palace, a perfect, utopian, logical society where every need is met and where the human soul suffocates. It is the world where 2 + 2 = 4, an unbreakable wall of facts that leaves no room for mystery, for choice, or for will. And it is the voice of Ivan Karamazov, the brilliant intellectual who uses his flawless logic to prove that if there is no God and no immortality, then everything is permitted, including cruelty, chaos, and murder. Reason, Dostoevsky shows, can explain everything about the world, except why any of it should matter. And then, on the other side of the battlefield, there is faith. But this is not a simple, comfortable belief in a distant God. Dostoevsky and faith is a desperate, agonizing, irrational choice. It is the choice to believe in goodness, in love, in Christ as a perfect, beautiful ideal. Even when all the evidence of the world screams that such a belief is absurd. It is the faith of Alyosha Karamazov, who answers his brother's logic not with a better argument, but with an act of radical, unexplainable love. This is the struggle inside your own heart. You feel it when you love someone beyond all logic. You feel it when you are moved by a piece of music that reason cannot deconstruct. You feel it when you feel a sense of guilt that no rational argument can erase. Dostoevsky's characters are not fighting philosophical positions. They are fighting for their very souls. He forces you to ask, where does your true trust lie? In the systems you can see, or in the feeling you cannot explain? He asks you to choose. Will you live in the cold, safe, and ultimately empty world of the Crystal Palace? Or will you take the irrational, terrifying leap of faith, embracing the absurd mystery of love and sacrifice? Few arrive here awake. Leave your mark with a like. It helps this reflection reach others who seek truth before sleep. The absurd and suffering. The quest for meaning. Why do you suffer? Your entire life, you have been taught that suffering is a problem. It is a symptom of a flaw in the system, a mistake to be corrected, an anomaly to be medicated, avoided, or engineered away. You seek comfort. You seek predictability. You seek a life free from pain. But what if suffering is not a mistake? What if, as Dostoevsky believed, it is the one thing that makes meaning possible? This is the philosophy of the absurd. The absurd is the gap between your ravenous, desperate human need for meaning and the cold, silent, indifferent universe. You look at the stars and cry out for a purpose, and the universe offers only silence. This gap, this agonizing silence, is suffering. For Dostoevsky, this was not a theory. It was his life. When he stood before that firing squad, with 5 minutes left to live, he did not think about logic or status. He thought only about the sunlight on the church dome, the sheer unbearable fact of being alive. The suffering of that moment was the birthplace of his consciousness. He saw that a life without suffering, a life of pure rational comfort, the life of the Crystal Palace, was the most meaningless life of all. It is the life of the underground man, who, drowning in his own spite, laments that 2 + 2 = 4 is a wall, a dead end. He prefers to choose pain, to choose the absurd, just to feel alive and to prove his will. This is Dostoevsky's great, terrible revelation. Suffering is the root of consciousness. It is the alarm clock that wakes you from the comfortable sleep of automated existence. It is the chisel that breaks the hard, smooth, indifferent surface of your heart. When you are in pain, you are no longer an automaton. You are real. This is why his characters find their redemption not when they solve their problems, but in the moments of their deepest humiliation and loss. It is Raskolnikov bowing down in the public square. It is Dmitry Karamazov accepting punishment for a crime he did not commit. They find meaning not by avoiding pain, but by accepting it and transforming it into a spiritual choice. He asks you to consider your own pain, not as an enemy, not as a failure, but as a teacher. What if the moments of your life that you most regret, the suffering you most fear, are the very things that have carved out the depth of your soul, making room for a profound, absurd, and beautiful meaning that comfort could never, ever provide? Freedom and responsibility. The individual choice. You believe you are free. But what is this freedom you cherish? Is it the simple freedom to choose what you buy, where you work, or what you watch? For Dostoevsky, this is a shallow, almost insulting definition of freedom. Your true freedom, he insists, is a terrifying, dangerous, and divine burden. It is not the freedom from difficulty. It is the freedom to choose your own path, even if that path leads directly to your own destruction. This is the central, agonizing choice he places before you. His characters are not victims of fate or circumstance. They are defined by their choices. especially their worst ones. Look at Raskolnikov. He was not poor. He was not starving. He was not forced to murder. He chose to, as an experiment of his own will, to see if he was an extraordinary man, a Napoleon, who could step over a moral line. His sin was not the murder itself, but the intellectual pride that led him to believe he had the right to choose it. Dostoevsky shows you that this is the paradox of your will. You are free to deny the very moral laws that make you human. But, and this is the crucial second half of the equation, you are not free from the consequences of that choice. This is responsibility. It is the unbreakable chain that links your choice to your soul. You are free to act, but you are not free to decide what that act means. Raskolnikov is free to kill, but he is not free to remain the man he was before. He cannot escape the overwhelming, crushing weight of his own conscience. His responsibility is not to the law, but to his own spirit, which he has mutilated. In Dostoevsky's world, true freedom is not found in asserting your will over others, but in accepting full, total responsibility for your own soul. This is the path of Father Zosima, who accepts the insults of others, or Alyosha, who chooses love over logic. They are free because they have chosen to be responsible. As you lie here, consider the weight of your own choices. Dostoevsky asks you, what are you doing with your terrible freedom? Are you using it to elevate yourself above others? Or are you using it to accept the profound, humbling responsibility of being human, of bearing your own cross, of choosing meaning in a world that offers none? Your freedom is not a gift of comfort. It is a divine and agonizing challenge. Evil and sin, exploring human nature. We are afraid of evil. We define it as something other, something external. It is the monster in the news, the tyrant in history, the darkness that exists outside of us. Dostoevsky rips this comfortable illusion apart. His most terrifying revelation is not that evil exists, but that it exists inside of you. It is not an external force. It is a human potential. Sin, for him, is not a simple breaking of a rule. It is a spiritual sickness. It is the act of putting your own ego, your own will, and your own pride at the center of the universe, elevated above love, above compassion, and above God. His work is a gallery of this sickness. Look at Fyodor Karamazov, the father, a man so consumed by his own sensual desires that he has become a buffoon, a creature of pure selfish impulse. Look at Svidrigailov in Crime and Punishment, a man who understands everything about depravity and yet is bored by it, a man who sees no reason not to be cruel. Dostoevsky forces you to sit with these characters, to see their logic, and in the most unsettling moments, to recognize a flicker of them in yourself. This is his exploration of human nature. He believes that the human heart is a battlefield where God and the devil are at war, and the battleground is you. The capacity for the most profound sin is not limited to evil people. It is a universal part of the human inheritance. The polite, rational, intellectual Ivan Karamazov does not kill his father, but his philosophy, everything is permitted, allows the murder to happen. He is guilty, perhaps more so than the one who struck the blow. Dostoevsky is warning you against your own intellect, your own capacity to rationalize away your conscience. He argues that the greatest evils are not committed by men who believe they are evil. They are committed by men who believe they are right. As you rest, let this thought challenge you. Dostoevsky is not asking you to judge the evil in others. He is asking you to have the courage to confront the potential for evil in yourself. For it is only by knowing the true depth of your own darkness that you can authentically and desperately choose the light. Guilt, regret, and redemption. What do you do with your guilt? In the modern world, guilt is a malfunction. It is something to be medicated, explained away by your past, or dissolved through therapy. It is an inconvenience. For Dostoevsky, guilt is not the problem. Guilt is the solution. It is the first, agonizing, and necessary step toward redemption. It is the voice of your soul, screaming that it has been violated. Regret in his world is not a sign of weakness. It is the sign that you are still morally alive. His characters are suffocating in guilt. Raskolnikov, after the murder, is not caught by the police. He is cornered by his own conscience. The guilt is a physical illness, a fever that separates him from all of humanity. He cannot be in the same room as his mother or sister. He cannot breathe the same air. His guilt is the uncrossable chasm he has created by his own free act. And this, Dostoevsky shows, is the true punishment for sin. It is not prison. It is not hellfire. It is the isolation that comes from cutting yourself off from the human family. So how do you get back? How do you cross the chasm? Not by logic, not by denial. Raskolnikov cannot rationalize his way back to innocence. The path to redemption in Dostoevsky is as terrible and public as the sin was private and proud. It requires 3 steps. First, it requires confession, not just to God, but to the people, to the earth itself. It is the act of stepping back into the human community. This is why Sonia, the prostitute, urges Raskolnikov to go to the crossroads, bow down to the people, and kiss the earth which you have defiled. Second, it requires the acceptance of suffering, not as a punishment, but as a purification, as the necessary medicine for the soul. You must accept the consequences. You must take up your cross. And finally, it requires love. It is Sonia's selfless, irrational love that follows Raskolnikov into Siberia, that sits with him in his darkness, and that finally offers him the possibility of a new life. Redemption is not an intellectual process. It is a painful, spiritual rebirth. It is the humbling realization that you cannot save yourself, but that you can be saved. Love, compassion, and empathy. In the dark, logical, and cruel world that Dostoevsky paints, where does the light come from? It does not come from intellect. It does not come from power. It does not come from social reform. The light, the only force powerful enough to counter the human capacity for evil, is active, suffering love. This is not the romantic, abstract love of ideas. It is a difficult, dirty, and often painful practice. It is the core of his spiritual vision. He shows you 2 kinds of love. The first is love in dreams, the easy love. This is the love of the intellectual who adores humanity as a concept, but cannot stand the real, flawed, and often messy human being sitting right next to him. It is the love of theories, of systems, of utopias. It is the love that, Dostoevsky warns, ultimately leads to tyranny, because it loves the idea more than the person. And then there is the second kind of love, active love. This love is hard work. It is the love of Father Zosima, who teaches that love is not a feeling, but a practice. It is the willingness to see the divine spark in the most degraded human being. It is the compassion of Sonia Marmeladova, a woman forced into prostitution, who retains a purity of soul that the intellectual Raskolnikov has lost. She is the living embodiment of empathy. She does not judge him. She weeps with him She shares the burden of his sin. This is the force that saves him. Dostoevsky suggests that your soul is saved not by your own mind, but by the love of another. Empathy, in this world, is the ultimate spiritual act. It is the recognition that every other person, no matter how broken, is a you. It is the understanding, as Zosima says, that everyone is responsible for everyone and for everything. As you listen, think of the love in your own life. Is it a love of ideas, or is it an active, difficult, compassionate practice? Dostoevsky's challenge is profound. Do not just feel love. Do love. Be the compassion that the world denies. For in the Dostoevskian universe, it is the only light that is real. Justice, vengeance, and forgiveness. You live in a world that is obsessed with justice. You crave it. You demand it from your governments, from your neighbors, and perhaps most fiercely, from those who have wronged you. But what is this justice you seek? Is it balance? Is it punishment? Is it the cold, impartial logic of the law? For Dostoevsky, the justice of the world, the justice of men, is a hollow and inadequate thing. It is a system that can cage a body, but can never, ever touch the soul. His world shows you the profound failure of purely legal or rational justice. Look at Raskolnikov. The legal system that tries him is almost a farce. It is a procedural afterthought. His real trial, the one that matters, has been happening inside his own feverish mind since the moment he committed the act. His true judge is his own conscience. His true prison is not Siberia. It is the suffocating alienation he feels from all of humanity. The state can only punish the crime. It is powerless to redeem the sinner. This is where vengeance enters. Vengeance feels like a more honest, more human form of justice. It is the cry of the wounded soul. It is the passionate, primal desire to make the one who hurt you feel what you felt. It is the force that drives Dmitry Karamazov. But Dostoevsky shows that vengeance is a trap. It is a loop of suffering that never satisfies. It is a fire that consumes the one who wields it. It promises release, but only delivers a deeper emptiness. The act of revenge only proves that you have become the very thing you despise. So, if the cold justice of the law is empty, and the hot justice of vengeance is a poison, where is the answer? Dostoevsky offers a third path, an impossible one: forgiveness. But this is not the simple, easy forgiveness of modern comfort. The I'm okay, you're okay. This is a radical, divine act of spiritual defiance. It is the forgiveness of Sonia, who sees the murderer Raskolnikov not as a monster, but as a soul in infinite, unbearable pain. She does not condone his act. She shares his suffering. It is the forgiveness of Father Zosima, who bows to the ground before Dmitry Karamazov, recognizing the suffering he is about to endure. This forgiveness is the only force that can break the endless, sterile cycle of justice and revenge. It is not forgetting the crime. It is the revolutionary, absurd choice to see the redeemable, divine spark in the person behind the crime, and to choose love over the flawless and fatal logic of revenge. Society and the individual. Conflict and alienation. Do you feel sometimes that you are a stranger in your own life? That the world around you is a stage, and you are the only one who has forgotten your lines? This feeling, this chasm between your inner self and the outer world, is the essence of alienation, and it is the native air of Dostoevsky's heroes. His most powerful characters are always outsiders. They are not part of the social machine. They are the broken cogs, the ones who spin wildly, or the ones who stop moving altogether. They are alienated, not by choice, but by the very nature of their own deep consciousness. The underground man is the perfect, agonizing portrait of this. He is an educated, intelligent, modern man, and he is utterly, hopelessly alienated. He hates the society he lives in, with its sensible rules and its predictable comforts, yet he desperately craves its approval. He is paralyzed by his own self-awareness. He retreats into his underground, his squalid apartment, but more importantly, the squalid basement of his own mind. From there, he wages a war of spite against a world he cannot join and cannot escape. This, Dostoevsky argues, is the fate of the individual in the modern age. As society becomes more rational, more organized, more perfected, it creates what he called the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace is the utopian ideal of the rational mind, a society where everyone is safe, comfortable, fed, and predictable, where 2 + 2 always equals 4, and, Dostoevsky warns, it is a place where the human soul will suffocate. The conflict, then, is not between man and man. It is between the chaotic, irrational, freedom-craving individual soul and the collective, logical system. You are alienated by the very progress that is supposed to save you. This echoes in your own world, does it not? In the performance of your life on social media, where you present a polished, curated version of yourself, yet feel a quiet, gnawing sense of fraud. In the pressure to conform to the algorithm, to the office culture, to the accepted opinions. You feel the pull of the underground. Dostoevsky's warning is timeless. A society that prioritizes the system over the soul, comfort over freedom, and logic over love will create a generation of underground people. It will breed resentment, spite, and a profound, silent alienation. As you listen, consider that feeling of separation. It may not be a sign that you are broken. It may be a sign that your soul is still alive, still refusing to become just another predictable brick in the walls of the Crystal Palace.
The influence of poverty and inequality. We often try to separate the spiritual from the material. We talk about the soul, but we ignore the empty stomach. We discuss philosophy, but we turn away from the realities of debt, of hunger, of cold. Dostoevsky never made this mistake. He knew that you cannot understand the human soul without understanding the conditions that crush it. His world is not an abstract philosophical stage, it is 19th century St. Petersburg. It is a world of crushing, relentless poverty. It is a world of squalid, overcrowded tenements, of clothes sold for drink, of children starving. This is the air his characters breathe, and it is poison. This is not just poverty as a lack of money. It is poverty as a constant, grinding humiliation. It is the loss of dignity. Dostoevsky shows this to you with unflinching, brutal honesty in the Marmeladov family. He forces you to look at Katerina Ivanovna, the mother, dying of consumption, coughing up blood, yet pathetically, desperately clinging to the idea of her former noble status. He forces you to look at Marmeladov himself, an alcoholic who knows he is destroying his family but cannot stop, a man who steals his daughter's last coins. And he forces you to look at Sonia, his daughter, driven to prostitution, selling her body to feed her starving siblings. This is the reality of inequality. It is not an economic theory. It is a spiritual catastrophe. It creates the conditions for despair. It is the tinder for Raskolnikov's murderous fire. His own poverty fuels his resentment and makes his Superman theory feel not just possible but necessary. But here, Dostoevsky makes a profound, radical turn. While poverty is the condition, it does not define the soul. This is his key. Poverty for him is not the source of evil. It is merely the brutal battlefield where the soul must make its ultimate choice. Sonia, in her utter social and material degradation, is the most spiritually alive, the most morally pure character in the entire novel. By contrast, the wealthy Svidrigailov, who has all the money and power he could want, is a walking corpse, a man spiritually dead, hollowed out by his own lack of limits. Dostoevsky rejects the easy answers. He rejects the idea that the poor are inherently virtuous, and he rejects the idea that they are to blame for their condition. He shows that your spiritual worth has nothing to do with your bank account. In the deepest poverty, you can find the deepest love. In the greatest wealth, you can find the most profound, nihilistic emptiness. The corrupting power, analysis of key characters. When you think of power, you likely think of kings, of presidents, of billionaires. You think of political office, of armies, of vast fortunes. Dostoevsky was interested in these, but he was terrified by a much more intimate and far more dangerous kind of power. The most corrupting power in his universe is not money. It is the idea. It is the power of the intellect, the pride of the mind, that allows one person to believe they are superior to another. It is the power that whispers, "You are extraordinary. They are ordinary. The rules do not apply to you." This is the power that destroys Raskolnikov. He is not corrupted by greed or lust. He is corrupted by a theory he read in a journal. His power is his own intellect. He divides the world into ordinary people, the herd, the lice, and extraordinary men, the Napoleons, who have an inner right to step over moral law for a higher purpose. This idea is the poison. It gives him permission. It is the power of the mind divorced from the heart, and the moment he chooses to act on it, it shatters him. But this corruption takes other forms. Look at Pyotr Verkovensky in Demons. He is a different kind of monster. He is a political nihilist, a manipulator who gathers a group of disaffected, idealistic revolutionaries. But he does not believe in their cause. He does not believe in anything. He is corrupted by a lust for power for its own sake. He wants to create chaos, to tear down the world simply to prove that he can. He is the corruption of the will, empty of all meaning. The mechanism of this corruption is always the same. It begins in the mind. It begins with an idea that separates you from your common humanity. The moment you see another person not as a fellow soul, but as an object, a louse, a pawn in your game, or a tool for your cause, you have lost your soul. You are no longer a person. You are a walking, hollow theory. And this is perhaps the most urgent of all Dostoevsky's warnings for you listening now. You live in an age of ideologies. You are tempted every day by the power of your own rightness. You are taught to dehumanize those who disagree with you. You see them not as complex, suffering souls, but as labels. The other side, the problem, the enemy. You are all, in your own small ways, tempted by Raskolnikov's intellectual power. Dostoevsky's antidote is simple and devastatingly hard. Humility, the humbling, painful, public recognition that you are not extraordinary. You are not a Superman. You are just a human being, bound to all other human beings by a common chain of suffering, sin, and the desperate shared need for love. True strength is not the power to rise above others. It is the courage to kneel beside them. Madness and mental illness in his work. Where does the line between a passionate mind and a broken one truly lie? You have been taught to see madness as a failure of the brain, a chemical flaw, a deviation from the normal. Dostoevsky, however, lived on this razor's edge and saw it differently. In his world, madness is not a biological accident. It is a spiritual and intellectual consequence. It is the logical, terrible, and final destination for a mind that has followed a false idea to its end. His characters do not just go mad. They are driven mad, usually by their own pride and their own theories. Look at Raskolnikov. After the murder, he does not just feel guilty. He becomes physically ill. He falls into a brain fever, a delirium. This is not a convenient plot device to hide him from the police. It is the physical manifestation of his soul's sickness. His rational theory that he is a Superman has declared war on his irrational conscience, and the battle is so violent that it shatters his body and mind. His madness is the sound of his humanity, which he tried to murder, screaming to be heard. Or consider Ivan Karamazov, the brilliant, cold intellectual. His philosophy, everything is permitted, is so airtight, so logical, that he can deny all moral responsibility. But his soul knows better, and so his soul conjures a visitor. He is haunted by a devil, a shabby, middle-class, and deeply annoying hallucination. This devil is not a horned monster. It is the personification of his own small, spiteful, and terrified conscience. His madness is his mind's last, desperate attempt to force him to confront the truth his intellect has so elegantly denied. In Dostoevsky's work, the mad characters are often the most honest. They are the ones who can no longer participate in the polite social lie. Prince Mishkin, the idiot, is seen as unwell, an epileptic, a fool. Yet he is the only truly sane and Christ-like figure in a society consumed by greed, ego, and passion. His illness is simply his inability to be anything but perfectly, transparently good. As you lie here, you may feel the pressures of your own world, the madness of its demands. Dostoevsky asks you to look deeper. Is what we call anxiety or depression simply a chemical error, or is it, at least sometimes, a sane and human soul's correct and healthy response to living an insane, inhuman, or spiritually empty life? Perhaps, he suggests, what we call madness is often just a soul that has been pushed too far by a false idea, a soul that can no longer bear to lie. Death and immortality, transcendental reflections. You will die. This is the one undeniable fact of your existence, the one great certainty that you build your entire life to ignore. You fill your days with work, with distractions, with plans, all to avoid the shadow that waits at the end of the road. Dostoevsky does not allow you this comfort. He forces you to stand in that shadow and look directly at it. His obsession with death was not an abstract philosophical curiosity. It was a lived, felt, and seared-in reality. As a young man, he was sentenced to death. He was tied to a post. He watched the firing squad take aim. He counted down his last 5 minutes to live, not in theory, but in the freezing Russian air. At the last possible second, a messenger arrived with a pardon. This experience, this proximity to the absolute void, became the central, burning sun of his entire philosophy. It burned away every triviality. He understood what it meant to be alive, because he had been, for all intents and purposes, dead. This is why his characters are so alive, so feverish. They are all living with the intensity of that last-second reprieve. In his world, death is the ultimate test of any idea. Does your belief system, your philosophy, your worldview hold up in the face of your own non-existence? He argues with a desperate passion that if death is truly the end, if there is no God, no immortality, just a black, empty void, then life itself is rendered fundamentally absurd. This is the core of Ivan Karamazov's argument. If this is all there is, why love? Why be good? Why sacrifice? If it all turns to dust, then everything is permitted. The idea of immortality for Dostoevsky is not a comforting maybe. It is a spiritual necessity. He famously wrote that if anyone could prove to him that Christ was outside the truth, he would still choose to remain with Christ rather than with the truth. He needed to believe in the immortality of the soul, because without it, love is illogical. Without it, goodness is a fool's game. As you rest in the dark, you are closer to this great question. Dostoevsky's vision is not one of fear, but of profound urgency. He is telling you that your life only has meaning because it must answer the question of its own end. To live well, he insists, you must live as if your soul is eternal. You must love as if it matters forever. Nihilism and the search for meaning. What if you woke up tomorrow and truly, deeply believed in nothing? Not just a doubt in God, but a complete loss of faith in everything. No morals, no truth, no purpose, no inherent value in love, in honor, or in life itself. This is not just skepticism, this is nihilism from the Latin nihil, meaning nothing. Dostoevsky saw this belief not as a passing intellectual phase, but as the defining spiritual plague of the modern world, a darkness that was coming to swallow everything. He created characters who were apostles of this emptiness. Even Karamazov is the intellectual nihilist. He is not a bad man, he is a brilliant one. He looks at the world, sees the suffering of one innocent child, and uses his flawless logic to respectfully return the ticket to God. He concludes that if there is no just God, there is no immortality, and therefore everything is permitted. He does not act, but his idea becomes the poison that allows his father's murder. Then, in his novel Demons, he shows you the social result of nihilism. He shows you Stavrogin, a man of immense charisma, intelligence, and will, who is so completely empty inside that he experiments with his own depravity, simply to feel something, to test the boundaries. He shows you Pyotr Verkovensky, a man who wants to tear down all of society, not for a better cause, but for the sheer, exhilarating joy of destruction. He wants to create chaos, simply because nothing matters. This is the horrifying, logical end of nihilism. Dostoevsky argues that it does not lead to freedom. It leads to self-destruction, to tyranny, and to a profound, paralyzing despair. If everything is permitted, then there is no reason to choose good over evil. There is no foundation for life. You, living now, are breathing this air. The soft nihilism of irony, of cynicism, the quiet belief that it all sucks anyway. The pressure to create your own meaning from a void. Dostoevsky asks, create it from what? On what foundation? His antidote to this poison is not a better, smarter argument. His antidote is life itself. It is the irrational, absurd choice to love, to suffer, and to believe, despite the silence of the universe. The meaning is found in Alyosha's quiet love, in Father Zosima's bow to the earth, in Sonia's selfless compassion. Nihilism, Dostoevsky shows, is the ultimate conclusion of the logical mind, but it is a place where the human soul, in all its chaotic, beautiful, and absurd glory, simply cannot live. We're halfway through this journey. Maybe you've closed your eyes, but your mind is still learning. Subscribe now and stay with us for what's coming next. The role of religion in Dostoevsky's life. When you, in the modern world, hear the word religion, what comes to mind? For many, it is a system of rules, a social institution, a set of ancient dogmas. It is a source of comfort for some, a source of oppression for others, and a source of irrelevance for many more. Dostoevsky's religion was none of these things. It was not a comfort, it was a fire. It was a desperate, personal, and agonizing spiritual battlefield. His faith was not a simple inherited belief, spoon-fed to him in the quiet of a childhood home. It was a conscious, violent, and painful choice, forged in the absolute zero of the Siberian prison camp and under the shadow of the firing squad. He wrote in one of his most famous personal letters, "It is not as a child that I believe in Christ and confess him. My Hosanna has passed through a great furnace of doubt. This furnace of doubt is the key." Dostoevsky was not a simple believer. He was, perhaps, the most profound of all doubters. He was Ivan Karamazov. He understood intimately and terrifyingly the weight of every atheistic and nihilistic argument. He felt the crushing, unanswerable logic of Ivan's rebellion against a God who would allow one child to suffer. He knew in his bones the silence of the universe, and that is what makes his faith so powerful. He did not believe because he hadn't heard the arguments against belief. He chose to believe because he had heard them all, felt them all, and found them to be a spiritual dead end. His faith was not in the church as a political institution. It was not in dogma as a set of rules. His faith was an intense, passionate, and overwhelming love for the figure of Christ. This was the center of his universe. He famously wrote that if anyone could mathematically prove to him that Christ was outside the truth, he would prefer to remain with Christ rather than with the truth. This is the ultimate irrational leap. It is a statement of spiritual defiance. His faith was not a rejection of reason, it was a defiant transcendence of it. He chose the living, breathing, perfect beauty of selfless, forgiving love over the cold, perfect, and dead logic of 2 + 2 = 4. For him, this was the only antidote to the nihilism that was poisoning Russia. It was the only possible foundation for morality. If the figure of Christ was real, then selfless love was the highest law of the universe. If love was the law, then life had meaning. If not, then Ivan was right and everything is permitted. As you listen, you may feel your own doubts, your own furnace. Dostoevsky validates them. He shows that true faith is not the absence of doubt. True faith is the courage to endure doubt, to look the void directly in the eye, and to still make the impossible, life-giving choice to love. Literary and philosophical influences. A mind like Dostoevsky's does not appear from a vacuum. We often imagine him as a singular elemental force, a prophet crying alone in the Russian wilderness. But he was not alone. He was a voracious reader. He was a man engaged in a fierce, lifelong, and often violent argument with the great ideas of his time. His genius was not in creating new philosophies from nothing, it was in wrestling with them. He took the polite, abstract, drawing-room philosophies of Europe and dragged them into the squalid tenements, the prison camps, and the desperate, feverish reality of the Russian soul. He took their logic and he set it on fire. You must understand the two great forces that he battled. First, the wave of European thought that was crashing over Russia, Enlightenment rationalism, French utopian socialism, and the atheism of the new men. In his youth, he was one of them. He was a member of the Petrushevsky Circle, a group of intellectuals who read these banned socialist texts, who dreamed of a rational, perfect, human-made crystal palace. It was this influence, this belief, that led directly to his arrest, his mock execution, and his Siberian exile. That experience did not just change his mind, it killed his old self. He saw in the frozen hell of the labor camp that these Western rationalist ideas were shallow, thin, and utterly disconnected from the deep, irrational, and profoundly spiritual reality of the human soul. He came to see this utopian dream as the ultimate danger, a godless, loveless Western import that would lead to tyranny. His second great influence was, of course, Russia itself. He turned away from the West and embraced what he saw as the true antidote, the mystical, orthodox Christianity of the Russian peasants. He absorbed the idea of the Urodivy, the holy fool, the divine idiot like Prince Mishkin. He embraced the ideal of Sobernost, a spiritual community based on shared love and suffering, not on a social contract. He championed the Russian soul as a messianic force, destined to save the world from the cold, logical decay of the West. His novels are the sound of this battle. They are the sound of Balzac's social realism meeting the mystical pilgrimage of a Russian monk. They are the sound of Schiller's romantic idea that beauty will save the world, being transformed into the terrible, suffering beauty of Christ. He read Dickens and felt a deep compassion for the poor, the insulted and the injured. But his most profound legacy was in taking these polite philosophies and showing their real-world, bloody, and spiritual consequences. He wasn't just a product of his time, he was a prophet against it, a man who saw where the Crystal Palace would lead, and he dedicated his life to warning us. Analysis of Crime and Punishment, a paradigmatic case. You know the story. Even if you have never held the book, the story is in the air you breathe. A poor student, an old parasitic pawnbroker, an axe, a murder. But this is precisely where most interpretations stop, and where Dostoevsky's true work, his real novel, begins. Crime and Punishment is not a whodunit. We know who did it from the very first pages. It is not even a howdounit, as the act itself is a clumsy, panicked, brutal mess. The true, agonizing mystery of the novel is why dounit, and more importantly, what happens to a human soul after the why has been proven a catastrophic failure. This book is a laboratory. Dostoevsky isolates a single, deadly, and intoxicating idea, the Superman theory, and injects it into a living human host, Rodion Raskolnikov. Raskolnikov is not a monster. He is a good man. He is intelligent. He is handsome. He is even, in moments, profoundly compassionate. He is just like you. But he is infected by an idea he read in a journal, the idea that humanity is divided into two distinct parts, the ordinary masses, the lice, who must obey the law and serve as material, and the extraordinary few, the Napoleons, the Newtons, who have an inner moral right to step over boundaries, even the boundary of blood, for a higher purpose. This is the ultimate test of nihilism. Can a proud, logical, superior mind rationalize away the very foundation of human morality? The crime itself is the answer. It is not the clean, surgical, triumphant act of a Superman. It is a nauseating failure. He is a terrible Superman. His intellect, which planned the crime, declared war on his soul, his conscience, and his soul, his irrational humanity, wins. He does not feel powerful, he feels sick. And then the real novel begins, the punishment. Dostoevsky's genius is to show you that the true punishment for sin is not legal. It is not the detective Porphyry. It is not the prison in Siberia. The true punishment is immediate, internal, and spiritual. It is the instantaneous, suffocating alienation that Raskolnikov feels from the entire human race. He has taken the axe and cut the invisible thread that bound him to everyone. He cannot be in the same room with his mother, or his sister, or his friend Razumikin, without feeling a wave of physical, icy dread. He is alone, trapped in the cold, airless prison of his own mind. The rest of the novel is not a cat-and-mouse game with the police. It is a spiritual war for his soul, waged between two forces: Porphyry, the logical arm of the state, who understands Raskolnikov's psychology perfectly, and Sonia, the prostitute, the holy sinner, the living embodiment of selfless, suffering love. Raskolnikov's proud mind cannot save him. His theory is a ruin. It is only when he finally, utterly rejects his pride, falls at the feet of Sonia, and accepts the irrational, humbling path of public confession and shared suffering, that his rebirth can, in the epilogue, finally begin. This is the paradigm: a proud mind, a sinful choice, a suffocating alienation, and a slow, painful redemption, found not through logic but through suffering and love. The Brothers Karamazov, a synthesis of his philosophy. If crime and punishment was the focused laboratory, the Brothers Karamazov is the entire, sprawling, chaotic universe. This is not just a book, it is a world. It was Dostoevsky's final, most ambitious, and most profound statement, and into its pages, he poured every question, every theme, every doubt, and every ounce of his agonizing faith. It is the grand synthesis of his entire life's work. He takes the full, contradictory spectrum of humanity and embodies it in one single, dysfunctional, and unforgettable family. The Karamazovs are humanity. You have the father, Fyodor, a buffoon, a lecher, a man of pure, selfish, depraved, sensual impulse. This is the Karamazov force, the chaotic, earthly energy in its most base form. And you have his sons, who are the battlefield where this force is waged. There is Dmitri, the man of passion, the body. He is chaotic, sensual, and violent like his father, but he also possesses a spark of honor, a capacity for great suffering love, a man who would rather sing a hymn than run from his cross. There is Ivan, the man of reason, the mind. He is the brilliant, cold intellectual, the true and final heir to Raskolnikov. He is the one who puts God on trial. He is the one who is tortured by the unforgivable suffering of a single innocent child, and who concludes with flawless, devastating logic that if there is no God and no immortality, then everything is permitted. And then there is Alyosha, the hero of the novel, the man of the spirit, the soul. He is the novice, the listener, the quiet one, the embodiment of active love. He is Dostoevsky's answer. He is not a great intellectual. He does not win the argument against his brother. He lives the antidote, but Dostoevsky, in his terrifying divine honesty, gives the devil the best lines. The most famous part of this novel is not its plot. It is Ivan's poem within the novel, The Grand Inquisitor. It is, quite simply, the most powerful argument against God and against freedom ever written. Christ returns to earth during the Spanish Inquisition, is immediately arrested by the Church, and is told by the old Inquisitor that he failed humanity by giving us freedom. The Inquisitor explains that the Church corrected Christ's work, taking away our terrible, unbearable freedom and giving us what we truly crave: miracle, mystery, and authority. Bread, security. The Crystal Palace perfected. And what is Christ's answer to this perfect, unassailable, crushing, rational argument? He does not argue. He does not debate. He simply, silently kisses the old, loveless man on his lips. This is Dostoevsky's final synthesis. The answer to the world's most powerful, logical argument against love is not a better argument. It is a simple, irrational, and transformative act of love. Dostoevsky's legacy in literature and thought. Some authors write books. Dostoevsky changed the shape of the human mind. His legacy is not a static collection of stories you place on a shelf. It is a living, breathing, and often dangerous virus of thought that has infected the very way you understand yourself. Before him, the novel was largely a social creature. It was concerned with the outside world, with manners, with class, with social structures, with external events. Dostoevsky took the novel and turned it violently, feverishly inward. He became the father of the psychological novel, charting the dark, contradictory, and chaotic territory of the inner self. His legacy is so vast that it splits into countless streams. First, there is psychology. Sigmund Freud himself called the brothers Karamazov the most magnificent novel ever written, and famously stated that Dostoevsky, not he, was the true father of psychology. Dostoevsky mapped the underground, the subconscious, the guilt complex, and the warring impulses of the human psyche decades before psychoanalysis gave them clinical names. Notes from Underground is a perfect, harrowing map of the neurotic, self-aware, and self-loathing mind. Second, there is philosophy. He is the undisputed grandfather of existentialism. Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, Friedrich Nietzsche, their entire bodies of work are, in many ways, a direct response to the questions Dostoevsky raised. The Underground Man is the first true existential anti-hero, the man paralyzed by his own freedom and consciousness. Ivan Karamazov's agonizing cry, "If there is no God, then everything is permitted," became the central, terrifying problem that 20th century philosophy spent its life trying to solve. Nietzsche, one of the few minds who could truly meet Dostoevsky on his own terms, called him the only psychologist from whom I had something to learn. Dostoevsky created what the critic Mikhail Bakhtin called the polyphonic novel. His books are not his single voice, preaching a moral. They are a chorus of warring ideas, a symphony of voices, where each character and each philosophy is given its full, terrible, and convincing power. This is his divine honesty. He gives the devil the best lines. He gives the arguments for atheism and nihilism more power than the arguments for faith, forcing his own beliefs to fight for their very lives. His most profound legacy, however, is that of a prophet. Writing in the 1800s, he saw the 20th century coming. He saw that the ideologies of rationalism, of nihilism, of the Crystal Palace and the Superman, the very ideas he wrestled with in his books, would, when applied to the real world, lead directly to the gas chambers, the gulags, and the ideological tyrannies that define the next 100 years. He knew that a mind divorced from a heart, that an idea divorced from love, would create monsters. His books are not dead letters. They are living, breathing, dangerous worlds. They are still asking you, as you lie here in the dark, the ultimate question: what will you do with your terrible, beautiful freedom? The beauty of suffering. Why pain is the root of consciousness. We have now arrived at the center. We are at the heart of Dostoevsky's darkness, and also, paradoxically, at the heart of his light. We are at the central, most terrifying, and most beautiful paradox of his entire universe, the idea of the beauty of suffering. You have been taught, by your entire life, by your entire culture, to avoid suffering. Your technology, your medicine, your philosophies, your very definition of a good life, all of it is dedicated to the elimination of pain. You seek comfort, you seek security, you seek a life without friction. In this worldview, suffering is a failure. It is an accident, a mistake, a problem to be solved. Dostoevsky stands in complete radical opposition to this. He suggests that a life without suffering is not a human life at all. It is the life of an automaton. It is the life of the Crystal Palace, where every need is met, and the soul, having nothing to struggle against, suffocates and dies. He gives you the underground man, who, when offered this perfect, painless, rational world, says he would choose suffering, choose spite, choose pain, just to prove that he is a man and not a piano key. Why? Because, Dostoevsky argues, suffering is the root of consciousness. This is the thesis. A person who is perfectly comfortable, who has never suffered, who has never been forced to their breaking point, is not truly conscious. They are merely existing. They are asleep. Pain, he says, is the alarm clock. It is the chisel that breaks the hard, smooth, indifferent surface of your heart. It is the only thing that forces you to stop merely reacting to the world and start asking the real questions. Questions like, why am I here? What is good? What have I done with my life? Look at his heroes. When are they redeemed? It is never when they are happy. It is never when they are rich or successful. They are redeemed at the very moment of their deepest humiliation and pain. Raskolnikov's new life does not begin when he plans the perfect crime. It begins after he has confessed, after he is in Siberia, after he has finally accepted his suffering. Dmitry Karamazov finds his hymn of joy not when he is free, but after he has been falsely accused and knows he is going to the mines. This is the beauty of suffering. It is not that pain itself is good. Dostoevsky is not a sadist. The beauty is that suffering is what gives you the choice. Comfort is just comfort. It is a dead end. Pain, however, is the raw material of meaning. You cannot choose comfort and also choose meaning. You must choose to accept your cross, your suffering. And in that very act of acceptance, you transform it from a random, meaningless affliction into a voluntary spiritual act. This is how you forge a soul. As you lie here, perhaps with your own pains, your own regrets, Dostoevsky offers you a new lens. Do not look at your pain as a failure. Look at it as the sacred, raw material from which your true consciousness, your very soul, is waiting to be born. The underground man, the paralyzing psychology of spite. Who are you really when no one is watching? When you are alone with your own thoughts, are they always generous, rational, and noble? Or is there, in the basement of your mind, a small, resentful, and spiteful voice? Dostoevsky gave this voice a name and a face. He is the underground man. This novella, Notes from Underground, is the dark, bitter, and foundational root of all his greater works. It is the prelude. The underground man is a minor civil servant in St. Petersburg. He is intelligent, he is well-educated, and he is completely, irredeemably miserable. He is a creature of pure, paralyzed consciousness. He is defined by spite. He refuses to see a doctor for his liver, not because he thinks it won't work, but out of pure, useless spite. He obsesses, for years, over a petty, imagined slight from a military officer who did not even see him in a tavern. He orchestrates a disastrous, humiliating dinner with old friends just to prove how much they despise him and how much he despises himself. Why? Because he is a prisoner of his own hyper-consciousness. He thinks too much. He analyzes every motive, every possibility, every perceived insult, to the point of total paralysis. He cannot act. He can only think, analyze, and rot in his resentment. And he hates it. He hates the men of action who are stupid enough not to see the endless complexities that he sees. But most of all, he hates the Crystal Palace, the idea of a perfect, rational, utopian world where 2 + 2 = 4. Why? Because it leaves no room for his will. His central screaming argument is that he would prefer to be irrational, prefer to feel pain, prefer to do something self-destructive and spiteful, than to be a predictable piano key in someone else's logical system. His spite is his last, pathetic, and tragic attempt to prove that he is free. This character, written in 1864, is a terrifying diagnosis of the modern mind. You are the underground man. You feel it when you are paralyzed by choice, analysis, paralysis. You feel it when you doom scroll on your phone, knowing it's bad for you, but doing it anyway out of an impulse you cannot name. You feel it when you make a small, self-destructive choice just to feel a momentary sense of control. This is the psychology of spite. Dostoevsky saw that a mind overfed on reason and starved of real spiritual meaning doesn't become enlightened. It becomes spiteful. It sours. The underground man is a warning. He is the ghost of the man who thought so much that he lost all reason to live and was left with only his own bitter resentment for company. The Grand Inquisitor, why we choose chains over freedom. Imagine this scene. Christ returns to earth. He comes not in glory but silently during the darkest days of the Spanish Inquisition. He walks the streets of Seville, and the people, the starving, suffering flock, recognize him. He heals the blind. He raises a child from the dead. And then he is arrested. He is arrested not by the Romans, not by the atheists, but by the church itself. By a 90-year-old cardinal, the Grand Inquisitor, a man who has devoted his entire life to serving God. That night, the Inquisitor visits Christ in his dark cell. This is the setting for Ivan Karamazov's poem, Inside the Brothers Karamazov. It is, quite simply, the most powerful, chilling, and persuasive argument against human freedom ever written. The Inquisitor, who is not a simple monster but a tragic, lonely, and in his own mind benevolent figure, condemns Christ. He tells him, "You failed." He says that Christ's error was overestimating humanity. "You gave us freedom," the Inquisitor says, "and this terrible, unbearable freedom is beyond human strength. It is the source of all our suffering. We cannot handle it." The Inquisitor then explains that the Church has corrected Christ's work. It has built its power on the three things Christ rejected in the wilderness. First, miracle or bread. Christ refused to turn stones to bread. The Inquisitor says, "Feed man first, and then ask virtue of him. They will bring their freedom and lay it at our feet and say, 'Make us your slaves, but feed us.'" The Church took away freedom and gave us security. Second, mystery. Christ refused to prove his divinity. The Inquisitor says, "Man cannot live with the agony of doubt and uncertainty." The Church took away free choice and gave us certainty. It gave us a dogma to believe. Third, authority. Christ refused to take worldly power. The Inquisitor says man has no more agonizing anxiety than to find someone to whom he can hand over that gift of freedom with which the poor creature is born. The Church took away responsibility and gave us a master. This is the final, perfect articulation of the Crystal Palace. The Inquisitor is the ultimate rational humanist. He loves humanity, but he loves us as a shepherd loves his sheep. He believes we are weak, pathetic, and happy only when we are enslaved, fed, and safe. And what is Christ's answer to this perfect, logical, devastating argument? He says nothing. He does not debate. He simply, silently approaches the old, overburdened man and kisses him on his cold, 90-year-old lips. The kiss is the answer. It is the answer of irrational, personal, forgiving love. It shatters the logic. The Inquisitor, shaken, lets him go into the dark streets. But the question hangs in the air of this room, for you. Are you sure you want freedom? Or do you, in your secret heart, crave the comfort of bread, the certainty of mystery, and the peace of a warm, gentle chain? Dostoevsky forces you to choose. The Suffering of Children, Ivan Karamazov's Great Rebellion. This is the argument. This is the one that stops the heart. It is the single, unanswerable question at the center of Dostoevsky's universe, the question he hurls at God, at faith, and at the very idea of a moral world. It is the rebellion of Ivan Karamazov. Ivan is not a simple atheist. He is far more dangerous. He is willing to accept the idea of God, to accept the idea of a grand, final, divine harmony. But he cannot accept the price. He cannot accept the world that God has made. His rebellion is not logical, it is moral, it is visceral, and it is built on the most unbearable, unforgivable, and undeniable evidence in all of creation, the suffering of children. He is a collector of these stories, these little facts. He forces his gentle, faithful brother Alyosha to listen. He tells of a child, 5 years old, tortured by her own educated, enlightened parents, who locked her in a freezing outhouse all night, smeared her face with her own excrement, and forced her to eat it. He tells of a serf boy, just 8 years old, who playfully threw a stone and injured the paw of a general's favorite hound. The next day, the general, in front of the boy's mother, has the child stripped naked, forces him to run, and unleashes his entire pack of hunting dogs on him, tearing the child to pieces. This is not abstract evil. It is not a philosophical problem. It is the sound of bones breaking. It is the smell of fear. And Ivan lays this evidence at the feet of Alyosha and asks the terrible question: if the perfect utopian harmony of the future, if heaven itself, was to be purchased at the price of the unavenged, unforgiven tear of just that one tortured child, would you be the architect? Would you consent to build such a world? His answer is a scream. No. He respectfully returns his ticket. He would rather remain with his unavenged suffering and his unappeased indignation, even if he is wrong. This is the ultimate checkmate against faith. How can you love a God who allows that? Dostoevsky is not being clever here. This was his personal agony. The death of his own young son tormented him. He was Ivan. And what is the answer? There is no logical answer. Alyosha cannot refute the argument. Dostoevsky knows you cannot think your way out of this pain. The only answer he offers is the one Christ gives the Grand Inquisitor: the silent, irrational kiss of love. The only answer is the act of Alyosha, who, after hearing this, performs an act of selfless compassion. The only answer is that you cannot justify the suffering. You can only, with your own life, try to heal it, one person at a time. Ivan's rebellion is the most profound statement of moral integrity in all of literature. It is the heart that refuses to accept a logic that costs too much. The Holy Fool, the disruptive power of radical innocence. In a world filled with Raskolnikovs, Ivans, and underground men, minds so brilliant they have become diseased, so self-aware they are paralyzed, what is the antidote? What if the answer to our complex intellectual sickness is not a better argument? What if the answer is an idiot? This is Dostoevsky's most radical experiment, the figure of the Holy Fool. In the Russian Orthodox tradition, this was the Eurodevy, or the fool for Christ's sake. This was a person who rejected the world's logic, who feigned madness or stupidity, who lived in poverty and spoke in riddles, all to get closer to God and to expose the world's vanity. Dostoevsky took this ancient spiritual idea and made it the hero of an entire novel. His attempt was to portray a perfectly beautiful man, a true Christ-like figure. The result was Prince Mishkin, the idiot. Mishkin is not stupid. He is, in fact, deeply intelligent and perceptive, but his goodness is so radical, so transparent, so innocent, that the normal world of St. Petersburg can only interpret it as stupidity. He is epileptic, which society sees as a mark of madness. He is incapable of lying, of social manipulation, of acting from ego or pride. He treats a prostitute, Nastasia Filipovna, with the same profound, heartfelt respect as he would a princess. And this is the mechanism of his power. His simple, unadulterated goodness acts as a catalyst. It is a mirror. He walks into a room filled with greedy, vain, passionate, and deeply broken people, and his presence does not judge them. It exposes them. His innocence, by its very nature, reveals their corruption, and the world cannot bear it. They are drawn to his light, but they are also driven to madness by it. They try to use him, to mock him, to possess him, and ultimately to destroy him. His compassion is so total that he is torn apart, literally, between the two women who love him, Nastasia and Aglaya. He is the ultimate holy fool, a man whose light is so pure that it sets the dark, complex, normal world on fire. Dostoevsky is asking you a profound question. You are obsessed with being smart, with being cynical, with being in on the joke. You are terrified of being naive. You see simple goodness as weakness. But what if that simple, foolish goodness is the only true sanity? What if the idiots are the only ones who see clearly? The novel ends in tragedy. Mishkin, shattered by the world's violence, reverts to a state of profound mental darkness. Dostoevsky's heartbreaking conclusion seems to be that a perfectly beautiful man, a true Christ, cannot survive our world. The world will not be saved by him, it will crucify him. The psychological double, the intimate horror of confronting yourself. You know that feeling, that quiet moment of self-loathing when you look in the mirror and do not recognize the person staring back. You have a public self, the one you show the world. And then there is that other one, the one that lives in your shadow, the one that whispers your worst, most spiteful, most forbidden thoughts. Dostoevsky took this feeling and made it real. He gave it a face, a voice, and a name. He called it the dvoinik, the double. This is one of his most powerful and terrifying psychological tools. The double is not a simple evil twin. It is the external, physical personification of a part of your soul that you have tried to deny, repress, or kill. It is your shadow, come to life. His first major exploration was in the novel The Double, where a timid, paranoid government clerk named Golyadkin one day finds an exact duplicate of himself. This new Golyadkin is everything the original is not. He is confident, charming, and ruthless. He proceeds to systematically take over the real Golyadkin's life, eventually driving him to a complete mental breakdown. The horror is that the double is not a demon. The double is him, the part of himself he wished he could be, turned into a monster. But the double grows more subtle. Look at Crime and Punishment. Who is Raskolnikov's double? It is Svidrigailov. Svidrigailov is the man who has actually lived Raskolnikov's Superman theory. He has stepped over all moral lines. He has lived a life of pure, sensual, selfish will. And what has he found on the other side? Not freedom, not power. He has found a profound, soul-crushing boredom. He is the walking, talking, lecherous ghost of Raskolnikov's future. He is the end of that road. That is why Raskolnikov is both repulsed by him and drawn to him. He is looking at his own soul. The most brilliant example is in the brothers Karamazov. Ivan, the lofty intellectual, has his double. It is Smerdyakov, the illegitimate half-brother, the servant, the lackey. Smerdyakov is Ivan's monkey. He is the base, resentful, and physical doer of Ivan's abstract intellectual idea. Ivan thinks everything is permitted. Smerdyakov acts on it and murders their father. Later, when Ivan's mind breaks, his double becomes a literal hallucination, a shabby, annoying, middle-class devil who mocks him. The double is the soul's check engine light. It appears when you are living a lie. It is the part of you that you have disowned, come back to claim its due. Dostoevsky's message is that you cannot be whole until you confront this other self. You must own your shadow, or it will, in the end, own you. The necessity of confession, the unbearable weight of unspoken sin. What is the heaviest thing you can carry? It is not a physical burden. It is a secret. It is the thing you did, or the thing you thought, that no one else in the world knows. It is the weight of an unspoken, unshared guilt. In our modern world, we are taught to manage our guilt, to process it internally, perhaps to share it with a therapist in a private room. For Dostoevsky, this is a profound and dangerous error. In his universe, guilt is not a private problem. It is a spiritual disease. And sin, at its core, is not the breaking of a rule. Sin is the act of separation, cutting yourself off through your pride and your secret from the rest of humanity. Therefore, the only antidote, the only cure, is confession, but not a quiet, private confession. It must be a public, humbling, and often agonizing act of rejoining the human family. The most powerful illustration, of course, is Raskolnikov. After the murder, what is his real punishment? It is not the police, it is the secret. The secret is a physical illness, a fever that isolates him. He cannot be in the same room with his mother or his sister. The weight of his lie makes the air unbreathable. He is trapped in the cold, airless prison of his own mind. His pride, the same pride that let him kill, forbids him from confessing. He tries to confess, he circles it, he plays games with the detective, but he cannot bring himself to do it. His journey to redemption only begins when he finally listens to Sonia. And what does she, the voice of his soul, tell him to do? She gives him a precise spiritual prescription. It is not forgive yourself. It is not talk to a professional. She tells him, go at once, this very minute, stand at the crossroads, bow down, kiss the earth which you have defiled, and then bow down to all the world and say to all men aloud, I am a murderer. It must be public, it must be humbling. He must kiss the earth, reestablishing his connection to life itself. He must bow to the people, rejoining the human community he separated himself from. The act of speaking the sin, of shattering your own pride, is the only thing that breaks the wall of isolation. We see this again in the brothers Karamazov with Father Zosima's mysterious visitor, a man secretly carrying the guilt of an old murder. He is a respected, successful man, and he is living in hell. He is only healed, only freed, when he makes a public confession, destroying his own reputation and, in doing so, saving his soul. Dostoevsky is telling you that you are only as sick as your secrets. You cannot be redeemed in private. You cannot be healed in isolation. The only path back to life is the humiliating, terrifying, and absolutely necessary act of speaking the unspeakable truth. Humiliation as a path. Finding grace in the lowest moments. You are taught to seek dignity. You build your life around avoiding shame. Your career, your social status, your very identity, all of it is a fortress built to protect you from one single terrifying feeling: humiliation. Humiliation is the ultimate social death. It is the feeling of being exposed, of being worthless, of being less. In Dostoevsky's world, this is a profound illusion. He does not just accept humiliation. He actively seeks it out. He sees it not as a poison, but as the only possible antidote to the most deadly spiritual disease of all: pride. Pride is the sin of Raskolnikov, the sin of Ivan, the sin of the underground man. It is the sin of the intellect, the sin that whispers, you are separate, you are superior, you are the center. And humiliation is the only force on earth powerful enough to shatter it. His work is a series of these shattering moments. He shows you that grace is not found in the palaces of the proud. It is found in the gutter, at the very bottom. Look at Marmeladov, the alcoholic father in Crime and Punishment. He is the very picture of humiliation, a drunken, broken man who has ruined his family. And yet, in his public tavern room confession, in his profound self-hatred, there is a desperate, twisted, and honest spirituality that the proud Raskolnikov lacks. He is at least not lying to himself. Look at Sonia. She is a prostitute, the lowest possible social standing. She is the embodiment of public shame, and yet Dostoevsky makes her the source of light, the moral center of the novel. Her humiliation has destroyed any possibility of pride, leaving only a pure, selfless, suffering love. But the most important path is the one he prescribes for his heroes. Raskolnikov's redemption requires his own public humiliation. Sonia tells him he must bow down at the crossroads and kiss the earth he has defiled. He must publicly declare his sin. His proud intellectual self cannot bear this. It is only when he finally, in a spasm of spiritual agony, kneels in the public square that his path to rebirth can begin. He must become a fool to be healed. This is the path Dostoevsky offers you. As you lie here, think of the things you are most proud of. Think of the self you have so carefully constructed. Dostoevsky asks you, what if all of it is a lie? What if your true self is not the person you have built up, but the person you would be if all of that were torn away? What if the path up is not up at all, but down, down, into the dirt, into the humility of shared human suffering? He suggests that you cannot find your soul until you are willing to lose your pride. And the lowest, most humiliating moment of your life might not be your end, but your truest, most sacred beginning. The figure of Christ, the impossible, beautiful ideal. In a world so full of darkness, of doubt, of logical dead ends, of children suffering, and of intelligent men becoming monsters, where is the answer? Dostoevsky's answer is not a system, it is not a philosophy, it is not a set of rules. His answer is a person, it is the figure of Christ. But this is not the comfortable, sanitized Christ of Sunday school. This is not a political Christ or a wise teacher. Dostoevsky's Christ is a radical, terrifying, and impossible ideal of beauty. He is the ultimate holy fool, the ultimate idiot. He is the living, breathing antithesis to every other value in the Dostoevskian world. He is the answer to the underground man's spite. He is the answer to Raskolnikov's prideful Superman theory. And he is the silent, kissing, loving answer to the Grand Inquisitor's perfect, cold, rational logic. Dostoevsky's personal faith, forged in the furnace of doubt, was not a belief in dogma. It was a passionate, desperate, all-consuming love for this one perfect figure. He famously wrote in a letter that if anyone could prove to him that Christ was outside the truth, he would prefer to remain with Christ rather than with the truth. This is the ultimate existential choice. He is rejecting logic, rejecting 2 + 2 = 4, and choosing beauty and love instead. This figure of Christ is the why for everything. Why should you not follow Ivan's logic? Because Christ showed that selfless, suffering love is a higher law than logic. Why should you not be the Grand Inquisitor and build a world of happy, enslaved sheep? Because Christ showed that the terrifying, agonizing freedom to choose love is the one thing that makes you human. This is the beauty that will save the world. It is not the beauty of a painting or a sunset. It is the staggering, impossible beauty of a single human being who loved so completely that he forgave his own murderers, who responded to all the world's violence, logic, and pride, not with a better argument, but with a total, selfless, and world-shattering act of compassion. This is why his characters are saved not by an idea, but by a person embodying this love. Raskolnikov is not saved by a better theory. He is saved by Sonia. Dmitry Karamazov is saved by Grushenka. Alyosha is this love in action. As you listen, in the quiet, Dostoevsky places this figure before you. He is not asking you to be religious. He is asking you to look at this one perfect, impossible ideal. And he asks, what if that is the only real truth? What if all your logic, all your pride, all your suffering is just a long, painful, circular road leading you back to the one simple, foolish answer that was there all along? The silence of God, Dostoevsky's personal anguish and final hope. And so we come to the end. We have walked through the pride, the doubt, the spite, the murder, and the madness. We have faced the suffering of children and the cold, perfect logic of the Grand Inquisitor. We have heard the beautiful, impossible answer of Christ. And yet, a silence remains. It is the silence that Ivan Karamazov raged against. It is the silence in the jail cell where the Inquisitor speaks, and Christ says nothing. It is the silence of God. This was Dostoevsky's final, personal, and most intimate anguish. He was not a man of easy faith. He was a man who, his entire life, was tortured by the silence of God. He was Ivan, demanding a sign, demanding an answer to the world's suffering. He was the underground man, demanding a world that made sense. His faith was not a peaceful harbor. It was a constant, raging battle, fought every single day, against the crushing evidence of a cold, indifferent, or absent God. His great novels are not statements of faith. They are the battleground of his faith. He gives the devil the best lines. He makes the arguments against God so powerful, so logical, so unanswerable that his own faith is pushed to the very brink of annihilation. This is his divine honesty. He does not offer you cheap comfort. He does not give you a God who solves problems, who stops the bullet, who heals the child. He gives you a God who is silent. And in this, Dostoevsky's final greatest paradox, he finds his hope. He suggests that the silence of God is not an absence. It is a space. It is the terrible, beautiful, and necessary space in which you must choose. If God was loud, if his justice was immediate, if 2 + 2 always equaled the good, you would have no choice. You would be a piano key. You would be an automaton. You would not be free. But because God is silent, because the world is absurd, because logic fails, your choice matters. Your choice to love, in a world that gives you every logical reason not to, is the one, single, profound act that gives the universe meaning. Dostoevsky's final hope is not that God will speak. His final hope is in you. It is in Alyosha, who, after his own crisis of faith, does not receive a miracle, but instead kisses the earth and rises, vowing to love the world. It is in Raskolnikov, weeping at the feet of Sonia. His hope is that you, listening now, in the silence of your own room, in the face of your own doubts, will make the same impossible, irrational, and life-giving choice, to reject the logic of despair and to create the meaning of the world by choosing to love it. Not many reach the end awake. Leave a single word below that defines this journey for you, and share it with someone who might need to hear it tonight.